Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another MEL3E, our grade 11 Math for Everyday Life course. My name is Kobe Flatt, and we are going to continue through the IL material for the MEL3E course. We are at the beginning of our fourth week of our 9-week radio Zoom schedule. I am going to be broadcasting 2 times today. I will do our regular 10 to 11 class, which is happening right now. And then this afternoon, I'm going to interrupt your regular broadcasting to pre-record tomorrow's class. So tomorrow's class will not be live, it will be a recording, as I will be out in Lac Seul for their career fair, setting up a booth for WASA. If you're in the area and you would like to check it out, please join us in Lac Seul for their career fair, happening from, I think it's 10 until about 3. But I can get more information out to you this afternoon about that. Today we are going to cover Lesson 7. Yesterday we finished Lesson 6, which took us 2 classes. We talked about buying decisions, where we calculated unit price and finding the best buy, how to get the most bang for your buck. Then we finished off with converting currencies. We learned how to find exchange rates, as well as how to convert American to Canadian and vice versa. We also learned how to set up those ratios so that we can convert any currency. Yesterday's lesson focused solely on American and Canadian dollars, but the process in which we use to convert can be used for any currency. Today we are going to be turning to Lesson 7 in your IL booklet, which can be found on page 14 of your Unit 2 material, where we're talking about simple interest. We're going to learn about borrowing and investing money. We'll be able to identify and calculate principal, rate, and time in order to use the formula I equals PRT. Let's find out what that means. Our learning goals for today are that by the end of the lesson, we will be able to calculate simple interest. We will understand the key elements when calculating simple interest. We will know we have met the learning goals because we'll be able to use the formula I equals PRT to calculate simple interest. We'll be able to explain the significance of constant growth to simple interest, and then explain the details of interest rates and time periods in terms of simple interest. Today's Lesson 7 is going to be setting up the foundation, those basics, to help with Lessons 8 and 9. It's important that we understand and are meeting the success criteria so that we will be prepared to be successful in future lessons as well. If by the end of the lesson you can't say you can confidently use the formula I equals PRT, or you can't explain the details of interest rates and time periods in terms of simple interest, then please reach out to me. You can go back and watch the recording, try it again. If it's still not making sense, please contact me so that I can put it in another way to help you grasp the concept, as again, you're going to need to know how to do it in order to be successful for not only these key questions, but the lessons to follow. Let's take a look at the mindful math that we're going to need to know in order to be successful in this lesson. We want to take a few minutes to focus on what makes a year. In terms of time periods, what makes a year? This is important when we are calculating the different terms of the formula. We've talked about this when we looked at salary back in Lesson 1. If you want to get paid monthly, you're getting paid 12 times because there are 12 months in a year. We need to remember this when we are calculating time in our formula. So You could say it takes 1 year. You could say it takes 12 months, which means 1 year, but in different time periods. So 12 months makes up a year. We know that there are 52 weeks in a year when we did our weekly salary. Nobody ever got paid daily, so we didn't talk about how many days specifically, but it's important to know that there are 365 days in 1 year. We are going to see how this is going to benefit us and how we'll need to know this as we continue through our lesson. So keep in mind, 365 days makes a year, 52 weeks makes a year, 12 months makes a year. We want to learn about simple interest and interest in general. When it comes to these daily tasks that we do, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're looking at your investments every single day, but because this is our math for everyday life, we want it to be applicable. So why on earth would we need to know this formula? It all comes down to borrowing money. When you deposit money in a bank account, you are actually lending your money to the bank. This is a little tip to pay attention to because it's going to come up in your key question. Make note of the fact that the bank is borrowing your money. So the bank will give you money for borrowing your money. They say, thanks for putting your money in our bank. We're going to give you some money for keeping it here. Because when you deposit money in a bank account, you are actually lending your money to the bank. Now, when you get a loan, you are now getting money from the bank. So when you're depositing money, you're lending your money to the bank. When you get a loan, the bank is lending money to you, which means that the bank is going to charge you for lending you money. When you're depositing, you're getting money for the bank borrowing it. When you're borrowing it, the bank charges you money. We want to keep these terms in mind as we go through this lesson and the next couple of lessons, actually. The money that is earned or paid for the use of money is called interest. So when we look at the money that you deposit into a bank account, you're lending your money to the bank. The bank is giving you money. That's interest. The bank is giving you interest for borrowing money. The same is true for when you get a loan. The bank lends you money. The bank is charging you interest for lending you the money. Typical ways of borrowing money include GICs, RRSPs, savings accounts. These are all investments. These are things that you put your money into that the bank is going to pay you interest on. Now, banks, credit cards, payday loans, they are all lenders. And there are different ways that interest can be calculated. Today's lesson looks solely at simple interest. In order to calculate simple interest, we're going to use the formula interest equals principal times rate times time. Remember yesterday we talked about all the different ways to write multiplication. We can say 3 times 2 with the little X symbol. We could say 3 times 2 with the dot in between. We can do a bracket, 3 times 2. We can put both the 3 and the 2 in brackets. All of these mean ways to multiply. Now, here is another one. When you are dealing with just letters, when you're working with algebraic equations, you don't have to put a bracket in between them. We can say PRT, and it means P times R times T. If we were to not have the brackets when we're writing numbers, it just looks like, if we were to say 3 times 2 without the brackets, it just looks like 32. So it doesn't work with numbers. but it does work with letters. When they're together, it means multiply. So that's what our formula is. PRT actually means principal times rate times time. Well, what does principal mean? What does rate mean? And what does time mean? The P in our formula stands for principal. It is the amount of money that is invested or borrowed, and it's represented as the letter P. So when we have our large formula, the overall, we have I, we're trying to find interest. The whole point of this formula is to find interest. And we do that by calculating PRT. So P is the principal, and principal means the amount of money that is invested or borrowed. It's that initial chunk of money that you're working with. The R, which is represented as a lowercase r, stands for rate, and that is the interest rate. It is the annual or yearly interest rate that a financial institution is giving you. They give it to you as a percentage, but it must be expressed as a decimal when you're working with it in the formula. The last part of the formula is T. The lowercase t represents time, and it is the time for which the money is invested or borrowed. And the important thing to remember is it is expressed in years. Always has to be expressed or represented in years. Much like the rate has to be expressed as a decimal, time has to be expressed in years. Alright, I've thrown a lot of information at you, so let's break it down and try to put into practice to help us remember what it is. The first example says identify the principal in each example. Well, if we remember, principal is represented as the capital letter P. In our formula, I equals PRT. So P stands for principal, and principal is that initial amount that is invested or borrowed. So when we talked at the beginning about when you are putting money in, you are depositing money, and the bank is paying you interest for borrowing your money. When you withdraw because you need a loan or you're taking money out, when you are borrowing money, then you're paying interest for borrowing the bank's money. We need to identify the principal in each example. I wanted to just double check the lesson because I was hoping that I put it first in your booklet as well. I wanted to make sure that I have it the same way, which I thought I had changed it to, and it looks like I must have. Yep, okay, good, we're good. So, principal, a lot of times when you see the key question and ask for principal, we feel like we need to do a lot of work. And that's why I wanted to change it in your booklet so that you didn't feel like after you'd done all the calculations that maybe you were doing something wrong. Principal is simply that initial amount. So for our example 1, A says Joey invests $300 at an annual interest rate of 4.5% for 6 months. We are only asked to identify the principal. We just need that initial amount that is invested or borrowed. So we're going to look for the key terms, invests or borrowed. So here, Joey invests. That means that our principal is simply the amount that he puts in. He invests $300. That means principal is $300. And that's it. That's all you have to do for principal. You don't need to do any crazy big calculations. You are just identifying that initial amount that has been invested or borrowed. So let's look at the second one. Ariana borrowed $5,000 at an annual interest rate of 2% for 3 years. Principal is the amount invested or borrowed. So we look for the key word, borrowed. How much did she borrow? $5,000. Joey invested $300. Ariana borrowed $5,000. That means our principal, P, equals $5,000. And that's it. Let's try one more. Sam put $750 in their account for 100 weeks at an annual interest rate of 6 3/4%. That means that he is putting or she is putting money in. They are investing. They are putting in $750. So our principal is P equals $750. And that's it. That's all we have to do for the first part. We're just identifying principal, which is the initial amount invested or borrowed. So that's how you find principal. Now, the next parts of the formula do take a bit more work. They're not as easy as pulling out a number. We need to do multiple steps to find R. If you remember going back to percentages, we know that percentage comes from the Latin root word, which means by the 100, which means we have to divide by 100. Because if we go back to our slide, rate must be expressed as a decimal. It will be given as a percentage, but must be expressed as a decimal. So when the bank tells Joey that he can invest $300 and they'll give him 4.5% for it, it's always given as a percentage. Ariana gets 2%, Sam gets 6 3/4%. But we have to convert it to a decimal. Because it's a percentage, we're going to divide by 100. Remember, when you divide by 100, you can move the decimal place, or you can type in to your calculator your percentage divided by 100. So for our first one, 3 divided by 100 is 0.03. 11 divided by 100, remember it's like there's a decimal zero after the 11 as a whole number. There are 2 zeros in 100, so we can move the decimal place 2 times, giving us 0.11. Now, when you've got a fraction in your percentage, you're going to write it out as if we're thinking of it in terms of money. 100% is like the $1 loonie. We have one whole dollar. When you break your loonie up, you can also make a dollar with 4 quarters. 1 quarter is 25 cents. 2 quarters is 50 cents. 3 quarters is 75 cents. And then you get your whole dollar. That looks like an 8. Let's try and make that a 0. There we go. So you can think of your percentage like in terms of money. When we have 7 1/4%, it is exactly that. It is 7 1/4. So we can say 7.25%. It's the same as 7 7.25%. But we need to put it into a decimal still. So even though it's 7.25, we have to divide by 100 because percent means by the 100. So you can type it into your calculator or you can move the decimal place. We have a decimal place at 7.25. We can move 2 spots still, giving us 0.0725. It's not enough to just write it as 4.50, 4.5%, 4.5%. We still have to divide it by 100, moving the decimal place 2 times. We get 0.045, and you can have the 0 or not, it's a placeholder. 26.75 is thinking of it like 75 cents, so 26.75. We still have to divide it by 100. Move your decimal place 2 spots because there are 2 zeros, and you get 0.2675. 18.29%, we have to divide it by 100. We're moving our decimal place 2 spots. We get 0.1829. We need to convert our percentages into decimals, and you do that by dividing by 100. You want to practice this, you want to try your hand at it so that you get good for when we need to identify the interest rate. Remember our formula: interest equals principal times rate times time. We figured out how to calculate principal. It's simply identifying the amount that is borrowed or invested. Now we need to figure out how to calculate the R in our formula. So let's practice. Same situations. A says Joey invests $300 at an annual interest rate of 4.5% for 6 months. This time we just need to find interest rate. We're just looking for R. Well, it tells us that interest rate is 4.5%. But we know that we must express it as a decimal. We cannot type into our formula 4.5%. We can't type into our formula 4.5 because we haven't gotten rid of that percentage, so to speak. We do that by dividing out. So once we have divided by 100, we're moving our decimal place 2 spots, meaning that our R equals 0.045. Let's try another one. Here we have Ariana again. Ariana borrowed $5,000 at an annual interest rate of 2%. We're looking for interest rate. We see it's 2%. It is written as a percentage, which means we must divide by 100. 2 divided by 100, you move it 2 places. R equals 0.02. We're expressing it as a decimal. Last practice, let's look at Sam, who put $750 in their account for 100 weeks at an annual interest rate of 6.75%. So that can also be written as 6.75%. We still have the percentage, so we have to divide by 100. Moving our decimal place 2 spots, R equals 0.0675. Now we're not writing percentage because we've divided it by 100. So R equals 0.0675. We have practiced finding R and we have practiced finding P. So we're halfway, more than halfway done our formula. The last part of our formula that we need to look at is how to calculate time. If you want to practice calculating interest rate, you can look on page 16 and try support question 1. You can always flip back to the answers at the back to make sure you're on the right track. The last part of our formula, going back, we see that interest equals principal times rate times time. Principal is the amount of money that's invested or borrowed. Rate is given as a percent, but expressed as a decimal. And time, the last part of our formula, is always expressed in years. Remember, we did our mental math to help us figure out all the different time periods in a year. This is where we're going to need to put it to use, because if we are told that somebody invests something for 21 months, it's not helpful to us in our formula. We have to convert it into 1 year. So how many months are in a year? Remember, there are 12 months in a year. If somebody tells us that they invest for 45 weeks, that's wonderful, but for my formula, I have to express it in years. So how do I find it in years? We have to remember that there are 52 weeks in 1 year. Lastly, if I invest something for a number of days, I have to put it in terms of a year. How many days are in a year? 365. Let's practice converting different amounts into years. Let's say then that we have to convert 21 months. How many months were in a year again? There are 12 months in a year. So we are going to divide 21 divided by 12. That means that 21 months is 1.75 years. Or you can say 1 3/4 of a year. 1.75 years. What about 37 months? We have to do 37 divided by 12 because there are 12 months in a year. 37 months divided by 12 gives us 3.08 years. If it was 48 months, 48 divided by 12 is 4 years. We want to put it in times of year. So it's okay if it's a decimal. It has to be represented in years. Let's try if we invest for weeks. If we invest for 45 weeks, how many years is 45 weeks? Well, there are 52 weeks in a year, so we want to divide by 52. 45 divided by 52 gives us not quite a full year, which we know because 45 doesn't equal to 52. So that would be 0.87 years. We're not quite at a year yet. If somebody invested for 420 weeks, we divide that by 52. When you divide 400 by 52, you get 8.08 years. So just over 8 years. What about days? If somebody invests for 180 days, how many days are in a year? 365. So we have to divide 180 by 365. And that gives us 0.49, or you could just round up to half a year. 180 days is half a year. What about 550 days? We have to divide 550 divided by 365, we get 1.5 years. 550 days is 1.5 years. We want to practice doing this so that we can put it into our formula properly. It has to be converted into years. So if we're talking months, you divide by 12. If we're talking weeks, you divide by 52. If we're talking days, you divide by 365. Let's put it all together. We know how to calculate principal. We know how to calculate rate. We now know how to calculate time. So let's put it all together. Our formula is I, which is interest, equals P, which is principal, times R, which is rate, times time, which is time. So we're going to use the exact same scenarios we've been using, and we're going to put it all together because it wants to identify. Oh, no, I lied. I got ahead of myself. Sorry. This is just time. Okay, we're just going to practice time. We know we can use this as good practice though. We know that invest 300, that's principal. We know interest rate is rate. 6 months, that's our time. So T equals 6 months, but we must express as years. So how do we turn 6 months into a year? We need to divide by 12 because there are 12 months in a year. 6 divided by 12 is 0.5. That means half a year. Anna borrowed $5,000 at an annual interest rate of 2% for 3 years. T equals 3 years. Do we have to do anything to it? No, because it's already expressed in years, so we get to just leave it. That's an easy one. T equals 3 years. Sam put $750 in their account for 100 weeks. So time is 100 weeks. But it has to be expressed in years, so we need to divide by the number of weeks in a year. There are 52 weeks in a year, so we type in 100 divided by 52. We get 1.9 years. So we found how to calculate P, we found how to calculate R, we know now how to calculate T for time. Now, if you want to practice finding how to calculate time and converting it into years, you can turn to page 17 and try support question number 2. We have learned how to put it all together. I is the interest earned in dollars. P is the principal invested or borrowed in dollars. It's the amount that you start with, that initial sum. R is the interest rate per year, and it is expressed as a decimal. T is the time in years, must be expressed in years. Now, let's try putting it all together. The best way to do this is to track all of your learning. So we want to say I equals PRT. This one gives it to us. It's telling us P, the principal, is $640. It's telling us R is 12.5% and T is 13 years. Now, P is good, T is good because it's in years, but our interest rate. So we want to find R as a decimal. Right now it's 12.5. We need to divide by 100 because it's a percentage. We have to divide by 100. 12.5 divided by 100 equals 0.125. So R equals 0.125. Now we can plug it all in to our formula. We want to find interest, so the I is unknown. That's what we're trying to find. So I equals, we're going to plug in the numbers. Instead of saying P, we know that P is $640. Then R is, we calculated to be 0.125, and T is 13. So we are going to say 640 times R, 0.125, times 13, which is our time. That means that the interest is $1,040. So that's it. We've put all of our learning together. We found P, we found R, we found T, which helps us to calculate I. Therefore, the simple interest is $1,040. We've got another practice question. This one pretty much gives it to us as well. It's telling us in this box that principal, so P is 1,500. R is 6%, but we have to express it as a decimal. So we're going to divide by 100. When we divide 6 by 100, we get 0.06. So R equals 0.06. And time is 18 months. But we must express time in years. So we have to divide by 12 because there are 12 months in a year. 18 divided by 12 equals 1.5 years. Now that we have identified our P, R, and T, we can plug it into the formula. Interest equals PRT. So interest equals, instead of P, we're going to plug it in, and we're going to say 1,500 times R, 0.06, times T, 1.5. So see how you can do it different ways. You can put them in brackets, or you can say the little X symbol for times. We're going to show you on the calculator too that we can put it into brackets. 1,500 times 0.06 times 1.5 equals $135. So if we were to do it with our, see how when I click on the X symbol, it comes up as the dot? It goes to show all the different ways of how to write multiplication. So I equals $135. Therefore, the simple interest is $135. The next one more example to help practice calculating. Principal is $480. We don't need to do anything with that. That is what principal is. Rate is 3.5%. We have to divide it by 100 to give us rate as a decimal. We divide by 100, we can move the decimal place. So rate equals 0.035. Time is 75 weeks. We need to convert it into years. So we have to divide by how many weeks are in a year. 75 divided by 52 equals 1.4 years. Let's plug it into our formula. I equals PRT. Instead of writing P, we're going to plug in the number 480 times R. Instead of putting R, we know R, we calculated it, so we're going to put in 0.035, and instead of putting in T, we calculated T at 1.4. So we can calculate 480 times 0.035 times 1.4, and we get $23.52. Therefore, simple interest is $23.52. But let's now focus on the second half of the question, which we should have been doing in the other two, but I wanted to focus on just how to find and plug our numbers into the formula. It's asking us to find the simple interest and the amount. That means our total amount. So if the total amount that we invested was $480, say we put in $480 to a savings account, and the bank said we'll give you 3.5%, and we keep it in there for 75 weeks. We keep it in there for almost a year and a half. How much money will we have when we take it out after that 1.4 years, after that 75 weeks? If the initial chunk we put in was $480, and we earned $23.52 in interest, we want to know now the total amount. What is our initial chunk plus our interest that accrued, that grew? By the end of the 75 weeks, we would have $503.52 to our name. We put in $480 and we just let it sit there. We kept it in the bank. We let it gain interest. The bank, for taking our money, borrowing our money, having our money sit there for them to use, paid us in interest. They're giving us $23.52. So I didn't have to work. I didn't have to do anything. I just had to leave that money in there and let it sit alone for 75 weeks. By the time I'm ready to draw it out, I actually gained that $23.52. So I now have $503.52. So we found the simple interest, the total amount. Therefore, the total amount with interest is $503.52. So now we have found interest and the amount. We have found the whole question that it was asking. When we think simple interest, we think of linear growth. Linear growth is when it grows in a straight line. It's sitting there, it's just consistently getting an amount over time. Let's determine which simple interest will be worth more at the end of the term. If we invest $2,000 at 5% annually for 2 years, how much simple interest will we get? As opposed to investing $4,000 at 5% annually for just 1 year. Which one do we think is going to give us more? We need to identify, so option 1, P, our principal, that's that amount that's invested, is $2,000. R is our interest rate, 5% expressed as a decimal. So we do 5% divided by 100. We get 0.05. And time has to be in years. It's already in years. It says 2 years. So we can plug it into I equals, instead of P, we're going to say 2,000. Instead of R, we're going to say 0.05, and instead of T, we're going to say 2. So what is $2,000 times 0.05 times 2 years? We would have interest of $200. What about option 2? Option 2, our P, the principal, is now $4,000. Our rate, it's the same rate. It's 5%. We divide it by 100, gives us 0.05. T, this time, is 1 year. And it's already in years, so we can leave it at that. Let's plug it in. I equals, instead of P, we're going to type in the 4,000. Instead of R, we say 0.05. And T is 1 year. 4,000 times 0.05 times 1, interest is $200. It's the same. So determine which simple interest investment will be worth more at the end of the term. It doesn't matter. You can invest less for longer or more for shorter, and you still get the same interest amount. So it depends on what your initial amount that you have to work with can be and how long you can wait for. If you've only got 2,000 and you can wait the 2 years, great. But if you can't wait that long and you've got 4,000, invest more, take it out sooner, and it earns the same amount. However, with our linear growth, you can see that 2,000 invested at 5% annually for 2 years gives us this constant growth to get us to $200. After 2 years, it gets us to $200. 4,000 invested at 5% for 1 year, still that linear growth, but it gets us to $200 faster than the 2,000. Tomorrow, we are going to build off of this and look at lesson 8, which is moving from simple interest to compound interest. Now, I'm actually going to be recording that class this afternoon, so tomorrow will be a recording as I will be in Lac-Seul. Please make sure that this lesson 7 makes sense. We talked about borrowing money. Borrowing money is when you're depositing money. You have the bank paying you interest. Borrowing, when you're actually borrowing and you're getting a loan, the bank is charging you for lending you the money. So who's borrowing? Is it you or is it the bank? If you're borrowing, the bank charges you. If the bank is borrowing, the bank pays you. We know that simple interest uses the formula I equals PRT, which means interest is equal to principal times rate times time. Principal is that amount that's invested or earned. Rate is as a percentage, but needs to be expressed as a decimal, and time must be expressed in years. It's important that we grasp this and knowing how to calculate it, so when we move on to lesson 8, we can build on to the next step. The next step is bridging, showing the difference between simple interest and compound interest so that you can calculate compound interest in lesson 9. They all go hand in hand. Remember, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me by email, phone, or Facebook. My office hours are Monday to Friday, 9 to 3, unless I'm broadcasting or, like tomorrow, out on a field trip going to Lac-Seul. That's all the time that we have for today. If you still need to go back and try it again, you can watch the recording that gets posted or reach out to me.